Today we're talking about a very important chunk of money buyers have to come up with upfront when purchasing a home. It's not the down payment. Today we're going to be talking about the earnest money deposit. What is it? How much is it? Is it negotiable? Who holds it? What happens to it after the transaction closed? All that will be covered in today's video. What is up, everyone? I'm Christian Tiessen with Hubbell Real Estate. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today we are talking about earnest money deposit. So what exactly is an earnest money deposit? Quite simply, it's a chunk of money that the buyer has to put down that shows the seller they are serious about buying the property. You know, if buyers didn't have to put anything down up front, in theory they could go around, they could write contracts on all kinds of different houses. They could tie up houses in different contracts and just waste a bunch of people's time. So by putting down an earnest money deposit, the buyer is telling the seller that, hey, I have this chunk of money, I'm going to put this down to show in good faith, to show in earnest that I'm actually trying to move forward with this transaction, that I'm trying to actually purchase your property. I'm not just wasting your time. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you've learned so far at the end of this video, or if there's anything else that I missed that I should have included. So how much do you have to put down? Where do you have to deposit the money? And when do you have to deposit this money? Well, the earnest money deposit typically has to be deposited within 3 days of opening escrow. And the amount can vary based on what is negotiated. So it's typical to see anywhere from 1% to 3% of the purchase price being put down as the earnest money deposit. What could vary, make that vary is the conditions of the market. Let's say we are in an extreme seller's market like we are now. Sellers may want to see a higher earnest money deposit from a buyer coming in. They have that leverage to ask for more money up front with the earnest money deposit. Let's say you're in more of a buyer's market and there's tons of houses for sale, there's not a lot of buyers. You know, maybe the sellers at that point, it's in their best interest to offer a much lower, or imply that someone could give a much lower earnest money deposit to even no earnest money deposit. So it's going to range based on negotiations, based on a lot of factors that are involved. Now, earnest money deposit is deposited with title and escrow here in California. So within 3 days of opening escrow, the buyer will be required to either do a personal check, a money order, or they can check on the contract, their preferred method of getting the money over to escrow. When they put it over on escrow, they're going to deposit the check and they're going to hold it in a separate impound account, an escrow account that keeps that money cashed and separate and ready to be used for its intended purposes. What happens at the end of the transaction? Either the transaction closes, the sale of the property goes through, or for some reason the contract is canceled. Let's say the contract goes through like everybody wants, the house closes, it's now your house, or it's now the buyer's house if you are the seller. The earnest money deposit is then applied towards the down payment. So if the buyer has a down payment of, say, $10,000 and the earnest money deposit was $3,000, at the close they're only going to owe $7,000 because that $3,000 will be applied to the $10,000. So that is a good assurance for the buyer. If you don't breach the contract, if there's no issues during the sale, that earnest money deposit doesn't just disappear. It does go towards your down payment. It does go towards your part of the loan of the house. Now, if the buyer does breach the contract, that means they cancel the contract for a reason that is not allowed. Let's say, for instance, at the end, they just decide, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, or maybe they found another house and they're like, hey, we want to back out of this contract, but they don't have any contingencies left. They don't have any legit reasons to back out of the contract. The seller can go after the buyer for damages caused. Now, damages could be many things. Let's say the seller has already moved out. They've hired a moving company. They spent $2,000. They've put their stuff in storage. They've maybe rented a property for a short-term lease, which can be more expensive than a long-term lease. They could potentially go after the buyer for those damages to recoup the damages. So that is why it is in the best interest for the seller to have a high earnest money deposit to be able to safeguard themselves against a buyer that backs out of the contract. It's very important for the seller. It is part of the negotiations, like we said earlier, but it is something to keep in mind with the earnest money deposit. So if you have any more questions about the earnest money deposit or anything else in real estate contracts, buying or selling, feel free to reach out. My name, again, is Christian Tiessen with Hubbell Real Estate. Number is 805-459-9834, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all very soon.